Alrighty, folks, if I can have your attention for just a few moments, I'd like to point out the safety features of our Boeing 737-700. To fasten the seatbelt, slide the flat end into the buckle. To release, lift up on the buckle.
As you probably figured out from the sound of the plane in the background, I'm off on another adventure. I'm headed to Los Angeles to meet Karen Snook. She created Kindred Spirits Care Farm in the middle of the Valley of LA. But first, I have to tell you something. The sounds you're hearing from the plane, it's all real. I recorded it on my way to LA. But I'm recording this part of me talking after my flight. And why am I even telling you that? I guess I feel odd not being transparent about it, like I was faking the adventure. It's probably silly since everything I seem to do really is an adventure. So there you have it, a little honest magic behind the scenes. And I guess I don't have to use this hushed tone anymore. Okay, so back to Karen and this farm. It's practically hidden and most people don't know it exists, but it literally sits in the middle of a giant city. Now, what's a care farm? I know it has rescued animals like goats, alpacas, and chickens, and it has an agricultural component as well. But why create it and how does it work? Also, what did the kids at the adjoining high school think of the farm and are they involved? Then to Karen, she left the corporate world to advocate for animals and create something special. And now she's helping people heal and connect to animals in nature. What drives someone to make that kind of change and how has life changed for her? So many questions. In my time with Karen, I get a tour of the farm and sit down for an interview. In this episode, I'm mashing it all up and sharing both experiences. But first, I'll stop at the hotel and then off to Karen in the morning. This is My Big Story, and I'm Christopher Swan.
The seatbelt folks, we've been cleared for departure. Enjoy your flight.
Okay, so I'm in the hotel and I'm getting ready this morning. You can hear that nasally voice I have. But here's the interesting thing. I wake up, I did not have the best night's sleep, so I'm actually pretty tired. So I'm getting ready and I want to go over to this interview. So I get up and I go to make coffee in the room, with a little coffee maker. And it decides to explode all over me. And like compressed coffee shoots out everywhere across me, the room, the desk. That's the glamour you guys don't hear. So I am going to go find a Starbucks, grab some coffee, and head over to this interview.
Territorial, so if she sees someone that she's not too familiar with or comfortable with, she'll start doing this, like, okay, I'm going to test you.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want her to test you.
I appreciate that.
Not a worry.
So how was your morning in LA, Christopher? Well,
Right through here.
first the coffee machine exploded on me at the hotel, and then the goat head-butted me.
Oh, gosh. Well, you know what?
Well,
you
woke
guys
me
are...
up, though.
Oh, okay. There you go. When you guys are done...
Hey!
Oh, so nice to meet you.
Likewise. Oh my gosh, I feel like we've been talking forever, so it's like old friends
we're
almost.
best buddies.
Yeah, I love a little tour. Oh my gosh.
Sure.
Right when I even drove up and I could hear the...
Roosters.
Yeah, the roosters, and I thought, and I'm in Reseda.
Yes, you're in Reseda, in the middle of houses and a neighborhood and whatnot, and suddenly, wait a minute, farm? This, what?
Yeah.
What? I remember the first time I stumbled on this place. I actually had a friend who lived on Elkwood, and I have no sense of direction. I get lost very easily.
Karen, it's so good that you're here. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So we have been walking around the farm for the last hour or so, and it felt like a giant education for me, which was super great. I got to meet the animals, and clearly the goats love me. They kept wanting to get to know me.
So much. She's just checking you out. She's just sort of saying, "Who are you?" And because she doesn't have hands, she takes parts of you in her mouth. Now, goats don't even have teeth on top. We don't do that. No.
She's like, wait a minute. I don't know if I like them yet.
We don't do that. We do not do that. And this is how you have what we call the conversation. You grab her by the horns and you prevent her from. And if she's really being a brat,
okay,
I can teach you.
Yeah, because they love you. They really actually do love you.
I feed them. I have special advantage.
That is true. That's why my cat loves me.
Exactly.
Because I feed her. Would you describe what a care farm is to the people that have never heard of that concept before?
Oh, absolutely. Would love to do that. A care farm, there's actually, it's almost an unknown concept here in the United States, but it's actually very well known in Western Europe. There are literally thousands of care farms in Western Europe. And the concept is actually pretty simple. Some brilliant person somewhere recognized that a farm environment is a very healing environment for human beings for two reasons, actually several reasons. One, people trust animals and enjoy nurturing and taking care of another living sentient being. Two, horticultural therapy is well known almost everywhere. Plants have a tendency to soothe people. And care farming in particular, they took that tendency of human beings to heal in the presence of plants and animals, and they said also, inclusion is critical. People who have been marginalized, people who have been made vulnerable for whatever reasons, maybe they have intellectual issues, maybe they have emotional issues, they have high anxiety or depression or anger issues, maybe they have physical challenges. For some reason, they have been sent to the margins of their society. Mm-hmm. If you bring them into a farming environment and they are included and welcomed and given, it's very important that they have a meaningful task. It's not just entertainment. They need to be included and integrated into the farm environment and the farm community. And that confluence of attributes is extraordinarily healing to human beings. People come to these care farms and they participate. They help tend to the animals, they help tend to the crops, they help do whatever it is that needs doing on the farm. And not only are they feeling better and more included and have better social skills and less anxiety while they're on the farm, but that healing translates to later on when they go back to their regular lives. Sure. They've done tests because there's so many in Western Europe, and it's actually supported by the government and by insurance companies and whatnot. They've done some tests to see, is this just like fun on the farm and you're having a great time, or is this something that actually, in fact, translates to long-term benefits for you? And it actually does translate to long-term benefits. They've done some, not huge longitudinal studies, but many months later down the road, they've tested their anxiety levels and or their inclusion levels or their social skill levels or their social awkwardness levels, and they are improved in all those different ways many months after having left the farm environment. So it really is something that is a healing opportunity. So
if they're so popular in Western Europe, but they're not so popular in the U.S., why do you think that is?
Isn't that bizarre? I really don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Because as soon as I found out about the concept of care farming, I had sort of an intuitive sense of it because I have had my own sense of healing in gardens and my own sense of healing in collaboration with animals. But I never sort of put it together in a farm context. But I had an intuitive sense. But once I learned what the name care farm and I started to study it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is fabulous. They should be everywhere. Where are they?
Yeah.
We should have care farms everywhere. Our culture, our society is so desperately in need of this kind of situation. And we've got farms. So I don't know why it isn't, why it hasn't translated from Western Europe to the United States. But that's one of the things I want to do is promote it like a maniac and get people to know what they are. And it's good for the farmer, too, because the people actually, because they have meaningful tasks, they're not a burden to the farmer. They're actually a value to the farmer. They actually, in fact, help with the animals and actually, in fact, help with the gardens or the crops or the whatever's going on. So it's a win-win for everybody considered.
Well, we were just talking about this, too, and I think this is a connection about permaculture. And you were explaining some of that concept. And I had done a little research because I wasn't really familiar with the term. So I knew a little bit about it before I got here. And as I started to read more about what that meant, and as you explained it today, and we went through like real examples of it, I was thinking even like with the red clover and then these different things, and how all these things work. Would you explain a little bit about what that is so people can understand like why that matters and how that's embedded in what you're doing?
Permaculture is actually a design system. It's people think of permaculture as being some kind of a way to make super gardens or super farms and whatnot, but it's just so much more than that. It really is. It's a combination of the word permanent and culture. So it's all about sustainability, and it's all about. In our culture, we are so heavily into dominance. We try to go in and dominate nature, and like, oh, we conquered the West, and we're all about going in and just enforcing nature to bend to our will, right? And it costs enormous amounts of energy to do that, and it is hugely destructive in the long run in almost every circumstance. Permaculture sort of turns that whole dominance theme on its head and says, wait a minute. Nature is the most powerful force on this planet, even more powerful, believe it or not, than human beings. And nature has ways of accomplishing tasks where human beings don't even have to put in any effort. So use the natural laziness of human beings and let nature do what nature does. And rather than trying to enforce your will and dominate nature to do what you want in monocultures and straight rows and pesticides and chemicals, and we will force our will on you. And one of the things I love about permaculture is so much of our culture is we land in a spot and we immediately start digging, or we immediately start shoveling or leveling it or imposing our will on it. And permaculture says, nah, let's just stop for a minute. Let's take a moment and observe. Observing is always the first thing you do in any kind of permaculture project. You sit down and say, I get what you want in terms of point B. Let's figure out what point A really is. And then let's figure out what the natural forces want to do with this piece of property and how it's naturally working with this piece of property or this project or this whatever. Let's see how things work. And ideally, before you even touch a piece of land, before you start digging and planting and whatever, you should look at it for a new garden for a year. Look at all the seasons, because wind will change in the seasons. The sunshine will change directions. The moon will do different kinds of things. The wind, the water, you'll see flooding. You'll see how water flows over your land. You'll see all those things. You want to see them without restrictions and without all the craziness that we impose. And because it changes over the course of the year, watch a full year cycle and then say, okay, I know what water wants to do on this property. I know what wind wants to do on this property. I know where heat tends to get stored on this property. And I know where heat leaves on this property. I know how air moves through these trees and creates certain leaves drop in a certain place. I get all those pieces. Now with that in my mind, now I'll design whatever it is I want to get accomplished using those forces that help me rather than always have to fight against them. Separate gardens here. The one over there on that side of the gate is called the Learning Garden. And in the Learning Garden, we try out all kinds of interesting growing techniques. Like we have hugelkultures, we have hay bale gardening, and we have trellises, and we have a worm bin, and we have we're trying all kinds of interesting things. We make all of our own compost over there. We have mulch that we use to keep the water from evaporating and drip irrigation. So it's all permaculture sort of based, all very organic, but the thing, over there, we can plant whatever we want. And I just ask the kids, what do you guys want to plant? And what do you want to eat? And if we can grow it, we try it.
And why do you try the different concepts of gardening over there too? Is it also to just give the kids a new exposure to
Absolutely.
how to grow
Everything
things
we do
differently?
here is for the kids.
Yeah.
Everything there's only one reason I do any of this. That's so the kids can learn all kinds of things that they wouldn't normally learn in a standard school situation.
Yeah.
Over here, one of the things, especially for this school, these are all at-risk kids. So these kids have had a lot of experience with failure. They have a lot of experience with things not working out for them. And one of the things about the Learning Garden is it's a safe place to experiment, because everything is a success. Even if it dies, it's still a success because you learned what didn't live, what didn't work, a technique that didn't work. And if it succeeds, then you get to eat the product.
That's true. And they look great, because when I walked around that side of the fence, I thought, These tomatoes look amazing.
Yes, and they are, and you can have some.
I've noticed them.
Maybe talk a little bit about how you help the kids understand this concept and how it can help them in their life.
Sure. The example that comes to me immediately is the spin garden. The spin garden spin stands for small plot intensive. And the concept is to create the maximum amount of product, meaning produce, plant matter, food, from the smallest amount of space. So how can you leverage every inch of your space? Because one of the things that I find with a lot of city dwellers, especially in a lower socioeconomic area like we're in, is, we try to teach them, kids, Flaming Hot Cheetos and Pepsi is not an adequate lunch. That's not lunch. That's what my husband calls bait food.
I also love that you even name that, because that example is really prevalent. Like, that's a real example.
Oh, absolutely. Trust me, I got that example because I see it happening every day. It's like these kids go, hey, it's time for lunch. Let's go to 7-Eleven and get us some Slim Jims and some Mountain Dew. I'm like, no, please, no.
There's no nutritional facts in that at all. There's nothing
whatsoever. Because they base their decisions for what to eat on what's cheap, because it's they don't have a lot of money, and what's tasty. Those are the only two considerations they use in their food choices. And one of the things we're always trying to do is there's so much more to consider in what you put in your mouth. Because what you put in your mouth affects your brain. What you put in your mouth affects your mood. What you put in your mouth affects your strength and your body and your ability to heal. And those of you who have allergies, and those of you who have stomach troubles, and those of you who are having trouble, you boys who are trying to build muscle, all these things, it's affected by what you put in your mouth. So when you put in Flaming Hot Cheetos, what do you think you're going to get? You're going to get nastiness. So let's talk about what you should be putting in your mouth. And then we talk about nutrition and fresh, whole plant-based foods, and we talk about how delicious they can be. And they look at me like, well, that's nice for you, Miss Karen, but we don't have that kind of space. I either don't have a yard, or it's very small, or I only have a patio, or maybe all I have is a balcony. So how am I supposed to get food if all I have is a balcony? And I'm like, you can get a tremendous amount of food, even if all you have is a balcony. Because if you grow vertically, you can grow all kinds of vining things vertically. Tomatoes, squashes, cucumbers, beans, all kinds of really nutritious, terrific things you can grow for the cost of a little dirt, some seeds, and some water. You can feed your family, and you can make your family healthier and happier.
And I bet that vertical concept is completely bizarre to them.
Totally bizarre to them.
Yeah, because
it's bizarre to our world. Our world, when you think farming, you don't think vertical.
Think
yeah, you think flat. You think, when I think farming, like we all do, we think of these gigantic tractors going across fields of wheat or corn or soy, harvesting up gigantic amounts of things, all automated, and it's all just this big monoculture. There's nothing there except whatever they planted, and that's farming, quote unquote.
Especially today, in today's age, that's really what I think about. Because I think about, that's the only way farmers can exist anymore, is they have to be these giant fields of one product.
Yes.
It's just corn or just whatever.
Yeah. And it's actually not true. In 2013, 60 experts from around the globe came together and wrote a paper for the United Nations. And one of their primary conclusions was the world is not going to be fed by monocultures or big ag. The world is going to be fed by small family farmers. And of course, big ag does not want anyone to know that. But I see that as being so very true, because that type of farming is hugely destructive to the soil. Absolutely. It is decimating to all the soil life. People don't understand that soil is alive. And when you force all those chemicals into the soil to make sure there's no weeds and no bugs and no pests and nothing but your precious corn, you kill the soil. You kill the soil life. And it doesn't come back. It doesn't come back easily. It takes a long time and a lot of effort to get it to come back. Have a great day. Oh, you were blessed by the pig?
Yeah.
You are very lucky.
It's gonna be a good day. It's
That's
gonna be a
right.
great weekend.
For sure. That's doesn't get better than that. Thank you. You're very welcome. See you later.
So are you also, when you're doing these pieces of trying to manage the soil or bring it back, are you educating as well and saying, hey, the red clover is this and this is why we do that?
Of
I would assume,
Hello.
but yeah.
Everything we do is an opportunity to teach the kids science. And actually, we're working with a professor at UCLA right now. We're working to build science classes based on farm activities. And the science teacher here, she's magnificent. She actually already has tons of ways. She brings the kids out every single week, twice a week, and all day long on the farm, she's teaching them science. She's teaching them how compost works, how fungi and bacteria take our old plant matter and create new earth, and how that earth goes back in and the components of it. And then she teaches them about plant and soil science, environmentalism, and water conservation, and everything is an opportunity to learn science, more science.
Sure.
How do plants germinate? What does it look like? What are the parts of a seed? What is germination really? Well, how is fruit made? Everything is a science lesson.
Absolutely.
So everything we do is science, and also like some food justice. Like, okay, so it's not only the academic but also the practical, because again, with this particular kind of audience, at-risk kids are very often, they're number one, kinesthetic learners. They learn by doing stuff. They don't really thrive in a standard classroom environment, but you get them out into the garden and they're doing stuff in a smaller group when they don't have that social pressure, then they start to really wonder, what is this? How does this work? And is that really going to make me some fruit? And why do we have to pull the grass? And whatever the questions just start bubbling up out of them, because these kids are brilliant, amazing human beings. They just learn differently, or they've had traumas in their lives. Maybe they've had problems with drugs. Maybe their parents have had problems with drugs. Maybe their parents have been incarcerated. Maybe these kids have been through some things that are just mind-boggling, and the fact that they are still getting up in the mornings and coming to school blows my mind, because they're persevering in circumstances that I probably wouldn't be able to persevere. So when they start asking the questions, I'm just like, I will give them whatever it is I ever can to help.
That's so good.
Keep them going, keep them asking questions, keep them learning, keep them inspired, and hopefully inspire them to do some of these things for themselves. I mean, because all this food that we generate, we are always pushing it. Take it home to your mama, take it home to your tia, take it home and we grow things like peppers and tomatoes and things that are naturally sort of culturally appropriate for this area. And
part of their diet already.
It's like, can't afford Whole Foods, fine. Here, have a bucket of tomatoes, have some cilantro, have some zucchinis, have some peppers. Take some home, eat it. So we're always encouraging to grow it, eat it, take it home. We on our farm Saturdays, at least one Saturday per month, we have what we call a farm club, which is the kind of the kids who are most interested in farm activities. And one Saturday a month, they are required, in order to stay in farm club, to come and work on a Saturday. And on that Saturday, we do whatever needs to be doing in the farm, but then we also bring a certain number of kids into our little teeny tiny kitchen, and we use farm ingredients and we teach them how to cook them, and we make a vegan meal for everybody who shows up, including all the community volunteers, and feed everybody a really sumptuous, vegan, delicious lunch.
I love that, because that really is the farm to table.
Exactly.
Right? But you don't have to go to a restaurant. We can cook it ourselves.
Exactly. We can do it right here. We pick it, we cook it in the kitchen, we all eat it and enjoy it. And then these kids also get to taste new foods. Like just last Saturday, we had this amazing...
How did you go from working in the corporate world to an animal advocate and to permaculture? How did those things happen? What triggered you to move?
The trigger, even though I was in the corporate world and I was succeeding well enough, I mean, my last job was vice president of leadership development for a very large financial corporation. So I did well enough as a corporate executive, teaching other corporate executives how to be corporate executives. But I never felt home there. I was always the odd weirdo. I was the vegetarian that people would stare at. And I mean, people would recognize that, like, Karen, you don't fit in the corporate world. You don't have a corporate mentality. You're not one of those people who seeks to strive up the corporate ladder and whatnot. You've always had sort of a more organic. You just don't seem like a person who belongs in wearing plastic, living in plastic, and looking for luxury cars. So it has always been a part of me since I was forever. The girl who, I mean, when I was a little girl, if you asked me what I wanted to be, I'd say I wanted to be a naturalist, because all I ever wanted to do was wander off into the forest and not be heard from for weeks at a time. And then how I got to be in the corporate world, it's kind of a sad thing. I mean, I experienced some I didn't want to be a normal person ever in my entire young life. And when I finally, when I left home at 18 years old, I came down to Los Angeles to be with my boyfriend, and it blew up in my face pretty horribly. And I actually experienced homelessness for a while. I mean, it was terrifying, horrible, and it scared the life out of me in a very literal way. It scared the life out of me, and I went into the corporate path mostly out of terror. I never ever wanted to be homeless again.
Like for safety and security?
Safety, security. I wanted to know where I was getting fed. I wanted to have a little bit of money in the bank, so if things blew up in my face again, I wouldn't be on the street again. And I wanted to build something where I felt like I had some kind of a net where I would be okay and I wouldn't die. And it took me a lot of years to recover from that trauma. So on some levels, I really resonate with these kids here who've also experienced trauma, because I know what that's like. And I know how it can pull the rug out from underneath you and make you question whether or not you're even going to be able to be sustained in this world. Because we, you think, as growing up as a kid, you just think, hey, everything's good. You get your food, your parents take care of you, you're going to go to college, everything's going to be great, whatever. And you get a job and you'll climb the ladder, you get a better job, you get promotions. You just think everything's going to be okay. You don't think, oh my God, I could be homeless with no food, with no job, with no education, with no opportunities, and people are going to treat me like garbage because they presume that because I'm on the street that I deserve that. You don't think that's going to happen to you, but it did. And I was a straight A student. And I was, I had this bringing up that was very sort of controlled and cloistered, and I was not allowed to have experiences outside of very narrow range. And, I was not allowed to do any of those things. And so I had no clue how to function, given suddenly I had no place. And I had no friends here, and I had no job, and I had no education past high school. And people looked at me like, well, clearly you're a loser and you don't deserve good things. So the corporate experience sort of translated from that. And it took me a long time to recover from.
Kind of get back to your roots of who you were?
Yeah, to get enough confidence back that I thought, okay, maybe I can be a little bit more of who I am and a little bit less of pretending to be the corporate drone that I am not. And it took 20 years, really, for me to say, okay, I've got a nest egg now. I've got a house now. I've got, I have skills now. I've got some credibility in the corporate world. I've shown the world that I do have capacity. I've got some experience. I don't have to be as afraid as I was back then when everything blew up in my face and I, landed on the street. I worked for Countrywide. When Countrywide got purchased by Bank of America, they basically laid off all of their training staff. I was part of the training staff. And that was in 2008. And I remember thinking, I have a choice at this point in my life. I can go find myself another corporate job, being an executive trainer or whatever again, or I can become who I am. And I realized, you know what? I would rather spend 4 years doing something that I felt had value, real value to the world, and then die at the end of those 4 years, than spend another 10 years being a corporate drone and then have some kind of retirement someplace that's comfortable retirement. And I'll be so old by that point, I won't be able to really start anything because it's like once you hit 60 or 70, you just don't have the kind of juice you used to. And I thought, if I don't take my chance now, I'm not really going to get a chance again. So when I got laid off from that job, I said, you know what? Enough. I'm going to take that risk. And yeah, it's a life risk, but I can't imagine spending more years doing something I hated for people I hated and not even liking myself very much. And if it means risking whatever it is, I'm okay with that now because I've had most of these experiences, and if I could choose an experience that has soul and one that doesn't, I'm going to go for that which has soul, even if it costs me everything that I own. I don't care anymore. Ever have a dragon's egg cucumber?
I don't think I've even heard of that. It really does look like a dragon's egg.
Isn't that cool?
It is. Is it the same flavor and texture and that kind of thing?
Yep. It's just all white everywhere. All the flesh, the outsides, insides, everything is white. And this is a mature one. It's the size of a
I need to,
dragon's egg.
can I grab a picture of that?
You can have it.
Well, thank you. Because I think people would love to see that.
Certainly.
Super.
The three things that drive everything we do are compassion, cooperation, and connection. Compassion for each other, for the world, for animals, for diversity, because so often what I see the issues of the world is we lack compassion. We lack that natural outpouring of love for each other and for non-human beings as well, and for our planet. There's a disconnect also. So the other thing is cooperation. So much of what drives the American culture anyways is competition. We compete, we fight against each other, we pummel each other, we do whatever it takes to win. And yet the things that are really truly beautiful in life almost always come from cooperating, not from dominating, not from winning, not from being the only one who gets the goodies, but from cooperating and working together in teams to accomplish something beautiful in cooperation with the planet, in cooperation with all the beings on all the forms of the planet. And the other one is connection. We are using so much of our technology to disconnect from each other. We disconnect from the planet. People have become so isolated and fragmented from really truly connecting and reaching out and meeting each other and valuing each other and valuing all the amazing diversity in plant life and animal life and natural opportunities and experiences this world has to offer. And we stick ourselves inside little boxes of cell phones and computers and buildings, and we are not connected anymore. So those things drive and inform everything we do. So I knew I wanted to create some kind of a symbol that incorporated all of that and also included nature, because nature for me is the ultimate information. Where I get my knowledge is always from observing nature. Where I get my ideas is from observing nature. How does she accomplish things? Because, human beings, we may give ourselves a lot of credit for being so inventive and creative, but almost everything has already been thought of, and we're just re-spewing so much. And when I need ideas, I go out and see what nature's done, because she's amazing. I never cease to be stunned with the complexity and variety and beauty of what she's accomplished. And so when I want to do anything, when I want to start anything, I always like to start with observing natural forms and nature and trying to incorporate that. So I started with a natural form, I end with a natural form, and it all includes the three values that are the most important to us.
Well, I've made it back home to the San Francisco Bay Area after a day on the farm in Los Angeles. A farm in LA. Who knew, right? The farm really is something special, especially for the community and for the kids at the adjacent school. If you want to learn more about the care farms and how they help communities and individuals, you should definitely check out Kindred Spirits at kindredspiritscarefarm.org. They have loads of great information on their website. I had a great visit with Karen and all of the animals, even Sweet Pea, the goat that was determined to show me who was boss of the farm. Because in the end, I discovered the trick to win her over. Just hold up some super overripe bananas and instant friend to almost every animal there. I'm practically a goat whisperer. If you want to see pictures of my time on the farm, including me feeding the alpacas and the goats, and if you want to see more about my adventures, make sure you follow me on Instagram and Twitter at @MeChristopher, and on Facebook at @TheChristopherSwan. Also, if you head over to mybigstory.show, you can find more pictures and videos about the farm. Now, if you want even more updates about my adventures, like the special projects I'm working on, where I'm traveling to next, the collaborations I'm doing, an interview I'm giving, and more, and an easy way to discover the stories, ideas, and creativity that energizes me, you should sign up to my Awesome Finds newsletter at awesomefinds.info. There's also one more thing you could do. You should tell your friends about the show, because just imagine if your friends were listening too, you'd have way more things to talk about over brunch or as you wait for the next season of Stranger Things. So go share something about the show on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or just share one of my posts. Well, thanks for coming along with me on this adventure, everyone, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm Christopher Swan, and this is my big story.